Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Shrink the State podcast. This is our very first episode. My name is Justin.
And I'm Will.
And I'm James.
Nice.
And we are here. We are called Shrink the State. We are very new to this. As you can tell, it's our very first podcast. We're trying to get our names out there. But basically, we're all Canadians, eh? We're from up north there, eh? And you know about up there, eh? So basically, I'll say our goals for today, because our very first podcast, we're not going to get too much into politics. We're kind of just going to, explain our backgrounds, where we're coming from, what our goal is, and then kind of introduce ourselves, and then from then on, we'll get right into the meat.
Perfect.
Right into the good stuff.
And I do think it's important to note just straight off the bat that we have coffee mugs on top of the desk, because only official podcasters have coffee mugs on the desks.
Yes. This is
Very
not
important.
sponsored by the Louder with Crowder mugs or the Leftist Tears, Ben Shapiro. We're not sponsored by any of those guys. So
Also, just to show how diverse we are, I have a Tim's and he has a McDonald's, and for some reason that's okay.
We do not discriminate against specific coffee drinkers.
Although we should.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay. Here we go. Ready? So I guess may as well start with what our goal is here, right?
Sounds good.
What I wrote down is basically one of our main goals here is to try to educate people. We're going to try to educate people on the economy, Canadian politics. We're trying to go for more of an open market. And kind of why we believe that the government system that's in place right now in Canada is going to lead down a bad path.
100%.
What do you think, William?
And I think we have the belief that open market is inherently better than socialism. And I'm hoping over the course of this podcast that we'll be able to explain that to educate everyone across the board and to ally everyone across the political spectrum to stand up against the left-wing political parties.
Yeah, definitely. Any notes on that there, James?
Well, yeah. When we say we're going to try and educate people on this, what we mean by that, or at least what I mean by that, is that we'll tell the truth as honestly as we can, and it's up to you guys to decide whether or not we're right. Now, we do have rather strong opinions, but these opinions, to our knowledge, are based in fact. If you can actually dispute it, and you have facts and evidence that back your side, we're willing to hear that and go over that as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like I like to say, we're all coming from different places here. Like, I kind of consider myself conservatarian. I'm kind of conservative, but I'm pretty libertarian more, I'd say. William, I'd say, is pretty much full-on libertarian, I'd say.
Yeah, I'm pretty much full-on libertarian. But I'd also like to add that we're not necessarily complete. We try to be as completely unbiased as possible with this podcast, and we're more concerned with the truth. Like, we really, our goal is to chase after the unfiltered truth. And so we're concerned less of emotion and more about facts. And so even though we come across from different places in the political spectrum.
And other spectrums.
We'll get into that a little bit later. We're always going to try to chase after the truth as much as possible.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say that's the goal of everything, right? Because if you don't know the truth, then what do you have? Mm-hmm. So it is an interesting balance, right? Because we get where the left wing is coming from. We get that they're kind of based on they have the right intentions in mind of building people up, trying to go for what they're hurting, where they're coming from. But the thing is, if you're going for what people want free stuff. If the government offers them free stuff, they're going to want to take it. We're coming from the side of that's not always the best answer. If we don't give you a bunch of free stuff, it'll make you a little bit more responsible.
Absolutely. And on the surface, like, socialism, it seems like a very attractive idea. Like, you share. I have something, you don't have that, we share it. But once you just begin to dissect that, even just a little bit, under science and logic, it all falls apart. That's why we think capitalism, and we'll explain that throughout the series, and explain why we've chosen to believe that, is really the best option.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the thing is, I would be 100% socialist if socialism worked. Right? Well, okay, maybe not really, because I have some moral qualms about it, but if it were to save lives and it were to actually help people, I would definitely back it. But the fact is, it doesn't. These programs don't work, they're defective, and they're morally, well, they're a bit of a strong word, but they tend to be morally evil, and that's coming from an agnostic that is understands to a degree of moral relativism. I don't believe in it 100%, but I do understand that there's a certain degree of relativism involved in the ideas of good and evil. So when I say evil, I mean it.
Interestingly enough, we all come, well, not all of us, I don't think you were ever into the left side of the political spectrum, Justin.
No.
But like me and my brother here, James, we were. So when I first started off in politics, I was actually a communist. I believed in communism. And that sounds really weird, but I didn't know it was called communism. I got sold into the idea that...
Sorry.
I got sold by the idea that, sharing everything would create this peaceful utopia. I didn't even really think I understood politics.
Well, on the outside, it looks attractive.
It
That's
does.
The thing.
And I had a friend that was really into the idea of communism and said that, if we share everything, then everything will be perfect. People don't have to work if they don't want to. It's kind of like a Marxism view. And I liked it a lot. But as I learned more about economics, as I learned more about human nature and what has worked in history and what hasn't, all throughout history, communism has never worked. It's always become corrupt. And that's why I slowly began to turn to capitalism and eventually libertarianism. And I think my brother, if you would like to maybe elaborate a little more on how or why you were first a socialist and then later became a voluntarist.
Well, and when we say capitalism, when a lot of people hear capitalism, they think of the current system. We're not talking about that. We're talking about free markets. The government has kind of rigged the system with winners and losers to who they pay out and what kind of regulations they put in place to keep out. So we're not talking about that at all. We're talking about genuine free markets where everyone has an opportunity to compete, and the best product winds up on top. It's very different from today.
Yeah, today is more about corporatism. I think that's what people complain about when someone says capitalism, and they're like, "Oh, it's terrible! All these big corporations, they control everything." I'm like, "Yeah, that's corporatism. That's not capitalism."
Yeah, definitely. And I think when you're saying where we're all coming from, you two came kind of from socialistic backgrounds, not backgrounds, but it's what you kind of first came into politics. You're kind of more into that. For me, the way I was raised on the political spectrum was both my parents were conservative. They always voted conservative. Growing up, I didn't really care. Honestly, I mean, what kid cares about politics? I'll even say, too, what people our age, right? I'm 20. I'll be 21 this year. What 20-year-olds care about politics? Out of all my friends, I've met one that actually pays attention to that stuff. And I think it's important for young people, too. But growing up, both my parents are conservative, and I never questioned it until the day I turned 18. I was like, you know what? Well, I am legal to vote now, so I can vote, but who should I vote for? I didn't want to do the same thing that my parents did, just choosing my future job. I didn't want to do the same thing that my family did. I always wanted to do something different. So I looked into it, and I was like, okay, well, what is it that conservatives believe? I looked into it, and I was like, you know what? I did see some of the great things that Stephen Harper did. He kept us out of debt, tried to grow the economy as much as possible. He wasn't perfect. He didn't have mistakes, but I had lots of agreements with that side of it. And then I went to the other side, and I was like, okay, well, what is it the liberals believe? What is this new Democratic Party? What is that? What is their belief system? When I looked into it, I asked my parents about it. Why is it that you vote conservative? And they gave a kind of, I'd say, a typical conservative answer. Well, we try to vote conservative because most of them are Christian. Obviously, I am a Christian. William is also Christian.
Yes, sir.
James is coming from an agnostic background. But I was like, to me, that's not good enough. First of all, I don't think it's true. I don't think it's true that conservatives are Christians. I think majority of Christians tend to vote conservative because they think it just lines up with that background.
Well, yeah, Jesus didn't die on your sins for you to become conservative.
Yeah.
That's not how...
Exactly, yeah. So for me, I was like, okay, well, so that's why I looked into it. I got into it, obviously. Most people are my age. We have access to YouTube. So most of us have the same first conservative voices that they hear. Obviously, Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, lots of these, Steven Crowder, lots of these guys had an influence on my beliefs. I went kind of full conservative for a while until I listened to some other arguments of even classical liberals. I heard some of those guys like Joe Rogan and Dave Rubin. But then I kind of more just realized that, you know what, lots of these conservatives are just for big government. lots of like conservatism tried to say limited government, but they don't practice it. They say it, but they don't practice it. That's where I think libertarianism I am more aligned with as well. So
100%. And I think all you people listening right now, you're thinking, oh, but Harper did this terrible thing and he did that terrible thing. And you're talking about the mainstream media. And see, this is the problem with Canadian politics right now. There's not a whole lot of people into Canadian politics. Mm-hmm. And there's a general apathy right now in Canada. It's an epidemic of apathy. And it
means apathy.
Apathy, thank you. And what you do here is basically mainstream media. So maybe you flip on the news for a little while. You go about your hobby, go about your day, and you hear a little bit of what the news is. But the news is generally left bias. You see, what a lot of people out there don't know, and this can be fact-checked. You can check this out. It's not a secret. It's public knowledge, is that the government, whoever is in power, gets to pay the media to just print out good things about them. They pay the media to be biased for them. Mm-hmm. So Justin Trudeau is currently paying the media tons of money just to support his propaganda. So it's bias. If you want unbiased news, you have to go online. You have to do your research.
Yeah, see, that's the thing, because even when it comes to media in general, this day and age, even the few media outlets that aren't left-wing, mm-hmm. as an example in America, Fox News, everyone will have their biases.
Oh, 100%.
So I think you kind of like, I don't even think you should avoid listening to things like CNN and listening to the left-wing things. Mm-hmm. I think you should still listen to them and see what their arguments are, mm-hmm. and then see where they're wrong, and then point on your side why they aren't.
Yeah, for sure. And I think maybe saying finding something that's unbiased wasn't correct. Maybe find things that are a little bit less biased, or what you said. I guess that is better.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that bias really doesn't tend to matter as long as they put it right on the front. Just look for places on the left and for places on the right, and then you can contrast the two. You'll see where the truth really lies. Because everybody's biased. Bias is always going to seep in.
Okay, yeah. I agree.
And that's what you'll kind of notice with us here. Like, none of us are stuck to one political party at all. We're pretty much, like, we have different ideas and different thoughts about everything. And that's why we think this outlet for us is going to work, because we agree on lots of things. There's still little tiny things that we disagree on, and that's where we can have the discussion. And I think, obviously, open dialogue, open discussion is the best way to make good dialogue. Those little, like, clickbait, few-minute episodes you see in the news, that's not going to change minds. Having open discussions, we've noticed from just YouTube, watching these other outlets, that it's the best way to spread ideas. Yeah. I
mean, unfiltered anyway.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, you go on the news, and here's the thing with broadcasting, is you'll have a regulatory agency overseeing it, and you have to pay to get your permits, which means the government ultimately controls what does and does not wind up on air. Mm-hmm. So, really, using TV or radio as an outlet for news at this point won't work, because the government can always pull the plug on something they don't like.
Yeah. See, that's true as well. Yeah, I'd say before we get into anything else, how about we introduce ourselves, say who we are and where we come from, all this good stuff. So, William, why don't you start us off?
Okay, well, my name is William, obviously.
That's a dumb name. Oh, sorry.
I was born in a family of 4 siblings, 1 brother, 2 sisters, one of which is a twin sister. She was born first, which she will never let me forget. I was born in a bit of a rough area.
Someone's triggered.
But I grew up with some good role models. My interests, I guess I would say, are guitar, light gaming, and yeah, that's
long walks on the beach.
It. Definitely not. Basically, your typical white cisgender
I'm your white cisgendered male.
Okay.
White definitely leaving that in.
Okay, white cisgendered male.
Cool.
I'm your stereotypical all around
neo-Nazi.
No, we're not putting that in. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, when he says light gamer, he actually means he's a loser. That's what he means.
That's what I was trying to say too.
I mean, geez, like, what do you play?
Pretty much.
What do you play?
Well,
what do you play?
Was it Candy Crush?
You play Candy Crush? None of your business.
Are you a 50-year-old woman?
Okay, just to give you a bit of an insight. Just to give you a bit of an insight of how much of a loser I am. I live in the basement of my friend's house, which I pay rent. So
he pays rent,
games.
And he steals our food.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, yeah,
That's okay.
I do.
That's okay. I stole your underwear last night.
You son of a gun.
Okay. And anyways, here is James.
Hello. So
He's the brother of William. His background was pretty much the same.
I wasn't going to admit to that, actually.
Oh,
Really?
okay.
He's the older
Oops.
brother.
Older brother.
Don't
He's
you
a
feel
little
honored?
gay. I will say that.
Actually, he's 100% gay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe 95%.
95%
95.
gay.
Does that mean 5% of you is attracted to women? How does that work?
I
Let's
have no
not
idea,
get
but
into
it's
that.
probably not.
Let's not get into that.
100%.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
And that's James in a
100%.
nutshell. Just kidding.
Sorry. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, they already said that they were. One of them was raised conservative, and another one was more of a communist in his ideology there. But I went through more of a rough patch, I would say, early on. Long story there, but I wound up not living with my family for a decent amount of time, for maybe 4 years. And during the time, I think I fell into the trap of social media and the recruitment schemes of the liberals. Mm-hmm. And they'll do this. I mean, they stoop that low. What they do is they're openly inviting to young people, and they'll get them in, and then they'll train them a certain way, and they'll have things spawn a certain way, mm-hmm. so that you'll have this entire belief system set up based on this alternate set of facts. So yeah, I was a socialist. I believe in most of the stuff the media says. I was your typical blue-haired feminist.
Yes, Jay.
Except I wasn't a feminist.
I would love to see you in blue hair, just saying.
That would be
That's
hideous.
not happening.
At least make your beard blue.
You'd be all over social media.
You look like a Smurf.
I would be all over social media.
You'd be an internet hit.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I dug into it. I mean, one of the things I found out was, I was okay with Bernie Sanders. Like
Bernie Sanders, the 1%.
Yeah, I mean, he made some sense. he did make some sense. I mean, he said, well, these people have lots of money, these people don't, why don't you share it? And then, that made sense at the time.
And he seemed to be the least heinous out of the other candidates.
Well, he does. I mean, there was this little article where he was helping
He's
some
just a
people.
cute old guy.
Yeah. Except this cute
old guy.
Yeah.
This cute
It's
old...
like something
oh.
James would say.
But this cute old guy who was... awkward silence. This cute old guy who advocated socialism actually had...
You keep saying that over and over again.
Oh my gosh, did I really put... Yeah, I did say that. Okay, I retract that. I am not attracted to you, Bernie Sanders. I think.
It's okay, gay marriage is legal in Canada.
But, no, I mean, Bernie, he made sense at the time. But here's the thing. I mean, he was a socialist at advocating the 1% spread his wealth. He has 3 mansions when you look it up, and he's actually taken money from several companies. So that's...
Interesting.
Yeah, it makes you wonder about where his intentions lie. His intentions, obviously, is to get money by exploiting these people.
Yeah.
And then I looked into the facts, and the facts simply... Well, they aren't socialism. I mean, they just aren't.
Well, facts don't care about your feelings, as my hero often says. Okay, I guess I'll give an introduction of myself. My name is Justin. That is Justin with a Y. Don't get it wrong. Justyn. I am a friend of William and James, known them my whole life. Grew up in the same neighborhood as them. Yeah, I grew up also with 3 siblings, so there's 6 of us in the family. Grew up in the same neighborhood, but after a while, I think I was about 10 or 9, I think, my parents realized that it wasn't the best area of Winnipeg to be raised in. There was lots of crime. So then we moved to the suburbs. And the good old life in the suburbs has been great. Loved it. Went to public school my whole life. Everything was great. Everything was awesome. It was fantastic, frankly. Okay. It was great. And yeah, I love music, classical music. I love singing. I'm part of my church. I lead worship there. And yeah, and everything is honky-dory. So yeah, and obviously we are all 3 of us are from Winnipeg. We've lived here our whole lives. We've seen things.
Things. Live through that harsh weather.
Yeah, I mean, even just a couple months ago, I was just walking right by my church. It's on Portage Avenue, which if you're from Winnipeg, you know that street. And there was this guy walking towards me, and he had a towel around his shoulder, and there was blood all over his shoulder. So he was walking towards me, and I was like, oh, shoot. This guy get shot or something? So I walked to him. I was like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, I just got stabbed. I was like, oh, do you need help? Do you need an ambulance? And he's like, don't call the ambulance. Don't do anything. My family's on the way. And I was like, oh, okay. And he's just dripping blood along the street. I'm like, okay, that's great. This is nice. So I keep walking. And then these two guys come running towards me in my direction. And I was like, am I going to die? So my heart started racing. And then I realized that those are the two family members he was talking about. And then he told me that at first he's like, yeah, he stabbed me. And then the kids looked at me. They're like, him? And he pointed at me. And I was like, no, I didn't do anything. And he's like, no, not him. Some other guy. He ran down Portage. But, at that moment, I thought I was going to die. Winnipeg has not been the best place for those, either if you're a Canadian listening or you're from outside of Canada. We have been the murder capital of Canada. I don't know if about years in a row, but something like 27 of the last 30 years, we've been the murder capital. So, dangerous city. Also, for those who don't know much about Canada, let's explain a bit about Canada, since this is going to be kind of the basis of our podcast here.
It sucks.
You know, honestly, I will say, in my opinion, we live...
Hortons, that's the only redeeming quality.
We live in igloos. No, we don't.
And Nanaimo bars, those are pretty good. Those are Canadian. In my opinion, I think Canada is the most beautiful country in the world. Nature, we have every type of, what is it called? Agricultural economics, I don't know what it's called, but there's plains, there's tundras, there's Arctic, there's mountains, there's the shores and the East Coast. I think Canada is the most beautiful country in the world. But we have lots of problems.
We do, and I can't disagree with Canada being the most beautiful country. We're also, I wouldn't say we're the most diverse, because I don't know if that's true or not, but I definitely say we're one of the most diverse. We have lots of different cultures. And here in Winnipeg, I think we have the most restaurants per square mile, and they're all incredibly diverse. And
oh yeah, hit skip the dishes. You will not recognize a single restaurant on there.
It's quite good, actually.
Indian food, man, so good. That goat kahari, that's good stuff right there.
My favorite restaurant here.
Day, though.
My favorite restaurant here currently actually is the East Indian Company. It's a East Indian buffet. East Indian food is actually my favorite type of culture of food. It is amazing.
It's pretty good, but you always feel it the next day. Know what I mean?
It definitely is quite spicy. A lot of different spices, but I think that's what makes it very colorful, very flavorful.
Yeah, but Winnipeg,
it's very colorful.
No, Winnipeg is extremely diverse. I mean, look at all the East Indians we have here, all the Filipinos, the Vietnamese, the Chinese. Not as much African Americans. That's one thing that kind of distincts Canada from America. I think America, about 13% of their population is African American or black, and with us is about 6%. So not as much 100%. Black people here. I'm friends with lots of black people. It just comes with the background of playing basketball. That's where you kind of just get that from. But I mean, we're very diverse as Winnipeg. I mean, obviously, white people are still the majority.
Those darn white people.
Which sucks.
How could they?
I want them all to die. But Canada is very diverse. But there's, like I was saying before, there's certain things that I look at and see. Like, William, if you were to name the best country in the world right now, just in general, what would you say?
America.
Yep. What about you, James?
Me?
Antarctica.
Well, actually,
Greenland.
I would say the Nordic countries actually have some of the best markets in the world, but America seems to have more freedom, as their constitution has several things that we lack.
Yep.
So
I would give the same answer.
So where do you think the best place to be an entrepreneur is then? I'm actually very curious. I always thought it was America. Do you think the Nordic countries?
I would say Nordic countries because they're actually doing better in the market area.
Really?
I believe so, yeah.
Do you think there's as much opportunity there to build a company, or is it just because their structure is better to build?
Their market is a bit freer, but they are starting to hamper it down a bit with socialism. But yeah, no, they're starting to dive a bit there with those with Islamic radicals creating no-go zones and stuff. So I mean, I don't imagine it being the best market-wise for very long.
For sure. That's actually a very interesting topic. We'll get into that in another podcast episode, I think, the Islamic no-go zones. But for you out there that are listening, you can definitely check that out yourself. Google the Islamic no-go zones. But don't use Google. I mean, you can if you want, but I wouldn't. They're very Google is very left-biased. because
and I didn't even know that until you guys had shown me.
Yeah, 100%.
It's definitely true.
Yeah, you can use. I mean, if you use a phone, you can download DuckDuckGo. It's more of an unbiased search engine, and you can Google. You can fact check everything we say. In fact, I'd recommend that you fact check everything we say.
It's interesting because just as you were mentioning that, just a few minutes before we started the podcast, I just typed in Scandinavian politics, and the very first option I got off Google was why democratic socialism will work. And it's talking about Scandinavian politics, where James is telling me that it's not the case when it comes to these countries.
A little bit of Islam come up in the future podcasts. Actually, it'll come up maybe quite a bit, I'm not sure. But it's not because we're targeting that specific faith. It's just because that specific faith just happens to be very politically involved at the moment with Western culture.
Yeah, and then there's like a difference between attack and criticism. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
Clearly.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that.
For sure.
And I was gonna say too, like, no, actually, yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, yeah. And then I was just thinking, to end this off, why don't we just tell people where it is that we got these ideas from and what made us have either the switch in our mind or what kind of brought us into politics. Yeah. So for me, I'd say it was mostly my friend who made me woke. So I had a friend who, one day I was working with him. We were both doing construction. We're on our way home from a job. And then one day he randomly just said, "Hey, what do you think about Donald Trump?" And I just like, "Oh, he's racist." And then he was like, "Oh, is that so? Okay, well, name me one time that he said something that was racist." And I was like, "Oh, all the time." He's like, "Okay, I'm waiting." I was like, you know, come on, you know. He's like, "Okay, so tell me then." Just gave me the exact quote that he said that is racist. And I stood there in 10 seconds of the most awkward silence in the entire world. I was like, you know what? Let me pull out my phone and try to Google something, because I couldn't think of anything. And then he made some other good points, and I was like, yeah. And then he started giving me his spiel of how extremely biased the media is, how they blow things completely out of proportion. And I will also say, Trump, he doesn't always say the smartest things. Although what he stands for is some of economics, some of the things that he's put into place have actually been good things for America. I mean, look at their economy's booming. They have some of the lowest tax rates in decades, and people are getting jobs now. But obviously, he's not the smartest with his words all the time, is what I'd say. But from that point on, I realized, what is going on with the media? This is weird. Because everyone I talk to, all over media, whether you're on Snapchat, you're on Google, like, all these articles are all just completely bashing him. I'm like, okay. At that point, I was realizing, I think that was right before he became president, but I'd seen that he had this big following, and I was like, where are these people coming from? And then as soon as I saw him win the election, I was like, okay, this doesn't make sense, because every single news outlet that I look at is dissing him, and it's saying how horrible he is, but the majority of the country voted him in. So where are these people coming from? What is it that he actually believes?
It wasn't a majority that voted him in.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he won by the Electoral College, which was set up because they're a republic and not a direct democracy to avoid mob rule. It's to represent the cities that have lower population density. Oh,
okay, there you go. Yeah, I was just saying, like, when he won the election, I was just wondering, how did he win the election? That doesn't make sense to me. So I was like, well, who's voting for him? Where did this come from? So then that's where I looked into it, and that's where I kind of got my influences. The very first political, I guess, person that I looked into was one day I was on Facebook, and I saw this bushy eyebrowed man talking about abortion, and I was like, I don't like this guy. I don't like the way he talks. It's very monotone, very to the point. I hated him, but I agreed with everything that he said. And I was like, who is this guy? He's like, factual, don't care about your feelings. And okay, folks, okay, gang, okay, alrighty.
And we found it was SpongeBob.
No, Ben Shapiro. Big influence on a lot of things I believe. He's pretty libertarian on a lot of things as well. And he's one of the influences. Jordan Peterson, more of an influence for me, not necessarily politically. I just say as my future, I really want to get into clinical psychology. I actually had seen him speak. He came to Winnipeg, and I got to see him. And I was at the very back, so I couldn't hear a word he's saying, which kind of sucked. But very good psychologically. What he's kind of made me understand a lot more, made me a lot more intellectual about people and how people work, how they develop, where these thoughts come from, where do these mental illnesses come from. He has a very interesting perspective because, like, he believes in God, but he's not a Christian. Like, he's got a very interesting view on everything. So, lots of my influences come from him. I'd say, obviously, as they call each other, the international dark web. These guys like Dave Rubin, like obviously Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, also a big one. I wouldn't say necessarily politically, but one of these guys I really like, Gavin McInnes. He's more of a comedian guy, but he makes good points as well. In my opinion, funniest guy I've ever heard. That's where I kind of come from. How about you, William?
Well, first a disclaimer: if our voices sound a little bit raspy this podcast episode,
we're all sick.
Yeah, with what I'm pretty sure is all the same thing, but that's
AIDS.
what happens when you work
flu.
together.
Are you implying something here, Justin?
No.
Okay, so just like Justin, I started off with just watching all the stereotypical media outlets on YouTube, the news, and I wasn't very well educated on politics, but I didn't like Trump because all the media just seemed to preach against him. And when I eventually I moved out of my family's house, I moved into his basement.
Yeah.
That's why I say I'm a loser. But
he's only kidding. It's true.
But when I first saw him watching Ben Shapiro, I thought he was very rude, and I pointed that out, and he's like, "No, I don't think so." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And he's like, "What do you think of Donald Trump?" I'm like, "Well, he's racist, just like him." And just like him with his friend, Justin asked me, "Okay, well, why do you think he's racist?" And I'm like, "Well, it's basically like an exact recreation of the moment when you got woke." And I remember leaving the house that day. I got together with my sister later on that day, and I was like, Justin, he's completely biased to that Ben Shapiro guy. You know what I mean? Like, that's what happens when you really want to believe someone's right. You just stick by them no matter what, even though they're wrong. And it was just complete and utter bias against them, because I just thought, well, everyone's saying terrible things about them. They must be right about that. And the more I looked into it, and the more I spent time with my friend talking about politics, just having conversations about it, and just watching these politicians, I realized, shoot, I don't actually disagree with anything they're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
And even though Shapiro may sound like he's a bit harsh, it's just the way he talks, and the media is just biased against him.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's because lots of the media is left-wing, and left-wing just comes from an empathetic spot. So they come from empathy. That's why that's their main focus.
Oh yeah, and there's a saying, and it's a bit of an aggressive saying, but the saying states that if you're not a liberal in your teens, you have no heart, and if you're not a conservative by the age of 21, you have no brain. And that's because teenagers, they haven't fully developed the logic area of their brains.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't really fully develop that until you're 25, and so they tend to think with their heart a lot, and so they come from a good place, and they get into the left, the whole liberal movement. And when you get older, I guess for both of us, I guess logic became more of a thing that we started using, to a degree. Okay. And we just started thinking about things more and realizing, and like Ben Shapiro says, facts don't care about your feelings, and really the truth is more important than how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
And and a lot of people, they do come from their heart. I think a majority of the population comes from their heart. But to say that the media comes at it from their heart, I think is just no. They
even
don't.
on both sides.
I mean, the media.
No.
You look at the media and the smear campaigns the media have. They don't have the best intentions of the people in mind. Mm-hmm. They're bullies, and then they're absolutely horrible human beings. I mean, there's no way around it. No one can smear people's names like that and still be good people.
Oh, namely Brett Kavanaugh. I'm not sure if you guys looked at that one.
That was crazy.
No, the kids. It was for me. It was the kids.
That campaign was insane.
I was an FCC word.
Yeah. No. Exactly.
Okay. But this is actually an interesting conversation we're having now. We're talking about all these people, Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro, because they're all American politicians, and I think some of them, like Steven Crowder, came from Canada. I think Jordan Peterson's also Canadian, actually. But there's not too many popularizers for politics, and I think going back to our first point of this podcast, I'm really excited about being one of the. Are we one of the first?
We're on the first.
I think we're one of the first popularizers for politics that aren't
Left wing.
Left wing.
Because actually the other day, right when we're not the other day,
a huge market for it right now.
Last week or 2 weeks ago, when we're kind of formulating our podcast, I just looked up Canadian politics on Apple Podcasts. Everything was left wing. Everything. I there might be a couple out there that I didn't listen to that might have been right wing, but not even specifically right wing, but libertarian, open market, less government involvement. That's going to be pretty hard to find. And the thing is, like we're kind of mentioning at the beginning of the podcast, Canadian politics, it's not a popular subject among Canadians. It's not that it's important. It is important. Just Canadians don't care.
It's very important. And right now, we're coming to a very crucial part in Canadian history with the new election.
Sorry, you sounded super Canadian. We're coming to a very important part in Canadian history.
That was intentional.
Canadians sound like Muppets. I don't get it.
But it's very crucial. The election's coming up, and apathy in politics for a country is suicide.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. That's where it's like, this is where we want to put our foot in the door and say, okay, although our introduction was, we were talking about American politics, that's kind of what brought us to this, because obviously in the media, good luck finding anything about Canadian politics besides if you might see a clickbait video on YouTube that says Justin Trudeau absolutely destroyed by a war veteran. It's gonna be pretty hard to find, and obviously I think Canadian politics are strange comparing them to American politics. As an example, watch a video of a discussion in the House of Commons. It's weird.
Well, it's not nearly as weird as the House of Commons, and I'm not sure if it's called that, but check them out in Britain. It's like a reality TV show.
It's weird.
I think they kind of turned into
you'll listen to it, and all of a sudden Andrew Scheer will be talking to Justin Trudeau, and he'll be like, "Tell me, Justin, you still haven't answered my question. Where is this and this and that?" And everyone stands up and goes, "Yes, bravo, bravo." What's going on?
I think
strange.
On Britain, it's all screaming.
This
And Britain's like, yeah, this and this and this and this and this.
It's kind of strange, yeah.
This might be a bit of an opinionated view, but I kind of think that our version of conservatives are basically like the liberals in America. We're even our version of conservatives are pretty left.
Big government.
Yeah, I mean,
Big government. They still want tons of government. It's weird. We have no one saying, maybe all this government isn't that good for us. Maybe all this government is not good for the economy.
Exactly. And for the people out there that don't know Canadian politics, the three biggest, I see, because in America, you have either Republic or Democrat. That's the only two options you really have. Obviously, you can vote third party, but very, very little people vote third party. In Canada, we actually have 4 or 5. We have conservatives, we have liberals, we have New Democratic Party, the NDP, we have Bloc Québécois, which is only a party that you can vote in Quebec, and we have the Green Party, which is actually gets quite a bit of votes because it's probably the people that, once again, don't care or don't like either parties. And then what's the other one that you were just telling me about? The
People's Party.
The People's Party of Canada, PPC.
They have 1 seat in the House of Commons, but we'll take it.
Yeah, but they got, when did they get off the ground?
It was just last month.
It was just last month. Are you sure it was just last month?
Just last month.
Oh, wow. That's even more recent than I thought. I thought it was like 5 months. But they're already growing quickly. And they believe... Check them out, guys. For all you guys listening out there, eh? Check out to see what that's all about, eh?
Yeah, they're conservatives that actually have male reproductive organs. I mean, it's great.
Wow.
They believe in limited government and all that. Like I think they're headed for a really great place.
Yeah, for sure. Cool.
Also, I'm not sure what you guys are talking about with Ben Shapiro. He talks normal. Like he talks...
He talks like this all the time, okay?
Well,
He has a very nasally voice.
He talks like SpongeBob, but he's just very straight to the point, and I kind of appreciate that. That's the way I am, so I
No, definitely, I agree.
Guess because we're so absorbed in our bias at the time, we just saw that.
It's because of our white privilege, it blinds us. Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that's a pretty good introduction podcast. I don't know about you guys. I think what we want to get into next time is our rights. Which rights do we have inherently given to us? We'll discuss, because I think there should be a set that we do have, so we'll kind of discuss what that is.
It's already up on our site.
I am super...
It is. Spoilers on their site, but we'll dive deep into it. We'll kind of explain it in better detail.
Okay, great. I am super hyped for that.
Cool. So, I will catch you all on the flippity flop.
See ya.
Bye.